Good evening, everyone. I am Shubham Patkar, interning with the Nature Side. Welcome you for all for webinar on Mangrove Ecosystem. Before we proceed, I would like to introduce my team members present here: Venus, Venu, Tamilvanan, and Harsha, and the organization. The Nature Side, powered by Wildlife Arc, is a group of nature enthusiasts who wish to share their knowledge and experience with the world. They strive to bring informative and educational content from the tiny living world to the city dwellers. Their motto is to empower environmentalists everywhere, which aims to create opportunities for budding environmentalists, people related to this field, and also the ones who want to join it anew through the various offline and online programs. This workshop is one such attempt with a training and internship program which we are part of. There are a number of such events in the line as well. We would like to inform you that we are having wildlife filmmaking expedition in the month of June, July, and August, about which further information will be shared by the end of the session. So stay tuned to know more. Now, coming for today's event, Mangrove Ecosystem. Being one of the underrated yet most important ecosystems on this planet, which support countless lives and various geological and geographical cycles. And that is none other than Mangrove Ecosystem, which belongs to the most threatened and vulnerable ecosystems worldwide, and experiencing a dramatic decline during the half a century. Mangrove forests, also called mangrove swamps, are productive wetlands that occur in the coastal intertidal zones. Do you know that these forests have the capability of absorbing up to 4 times more carbon dioxide by area than upland terrestrial forests, and that they are very crucial for human lives? Explore this peculiar habitat in this webinar and experience diversified aspects in a comprehensive way, gaining substantial fundamentals about this distinct ecosystem. For this webinar, I would like to invite Dr. Vishnu Prasad. Dr. Vishnu Prasad graduated in botany and post-graduated with specialization in environmental botany from SIS College, Autonomous Science. After that, he completed PhD from Forest Research Institute, Dehradun, with a specialization in wood anatomy. Dr. Vishnu Prasad has done research in the variations in the secondary xylem of hardwood trees, growing in the oldest iron ore mines of Odisha. Also, there are 4 more research papers to his credit. Also, he is the member of the Indian Science Congress Association, ISCA, editorial board member for the Journal of Ecology and Natural Resources, also the editorial board member in American Journal of Plant Biology, and was appointed as Earth Ambassador in Mumbai for the Green Revolution Certification Program. He has been awarded the Certificate of Excellence in Reviewing by the International Journal of Plant and Soil Science. Also, he has presented paper on wood anatomy of hardwood tree species at the Plant Science Virtual 2020 International Webinar. He is currently working as Assistant Professor in the Department of Botany, SIS College, Autonomous Science. Thank you. I request all the participants to keep themselves muted. If you have any queries, please type it down in the chat box. We will take up all the questions by the end of the session. Thank you once again. Over to you, sir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Shubham, for the wonderful introduction. And before I begin, I must thank and acknowledge that I got this opportunity to present on this wonderful topic that is about the mangrove ecosystem. And as you rightly said, that there is a lot of awareness which is still required at the student level. And this is something which not only for the ones who are pursuing science or biology, it is for everybody. Because ultimately we are talking about that component of the environment where everybody is still dependent upon. So thanks a lot for that. And I'll be beginning with my PPT. I hope my screen is visible and I'm audible clearly.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yes,
and
sir.
Screen is visible.
Okay, thank you. Fine. So hello friends, good evening. My topic for the session today, that is about mangrove ecosystem as it is being put across. So it's quite a very broad topic, because when we are talking about a particular ecosystem, it is encompassing, it includes a lot of components within it. So the entire session, which has been concised in the next 1.5 hours, it will be comprising about the different aspects to this ecosystem. And because we have audience and listeners from different backgrounds, so my topics for today, that will begin with introduction to the mangroves as an ecosystem. So first of all, we will be understanding what exactly is the meaning of an ecosystem, though many of you must be aware about it. Then we will come down to the mangroves. And before we come to the mangroves as an ecosystem, the first thing that we should understand is that mangroves are the major component of this ecosystem are the plants. And what kind of features and the adaptations are these mangrove plants have, which makes them separate from the other plants. Then we will see the Indian scenario. What is the distribution of mangrove ecosystems in our country? Like geographically, where are they distributed? How much is the area? And some updates based on that. That will be followed by the flora and the fauna. That will be talking about the biodiversity of this ecosystem. So, of course, the types of organisms in this ecosystem, if you say, there is a very huge list. So some of the important prime ones I'll be discussing regarding the flora and the fauna both, which will be like in between, like there's no separate content based on significance, because as and when we go through the discussion about the ecosystem, the significance automatically will be highlighted. Then once you understand the significance, once you have a clear idea about the biodiversity, the distribution, especially with the Indian scenario, we should also be knowing like this fragile ecosystem. I will purposely use the word fragile over here because this ecosystem is very much in danger, and we are all aware about the major reason for this danger because of the threat to this ecosystem. So that will be pointing across towards the end. And once we know what are the problems that this ecosystem is facing, we will also talk about the conservation aspects with respect to the mangroves. So I have tried to incorporate almost everything with respect to the mangrove ecosystem in this topic. So coming to the actual topic about mangroves. So before that, just let me give a brief idea about, we are talking about ecosystem over here. So when we mention the word ecosystem, it means it is a part of an environment. Like this topic is based on environment and ecology that we all normally every time come across. So ecosystem, the word itself is giving you the word system. That means it is a part of an environment which consists of two main factors. One of them is the abiotic factors and the other one is biotic factors. Any system of an environment, a significant unit, which is consisting of biotic as well as abiotic factors both. When we say biotic factors, that means they are the living organisms which live within that ecosystem. So it's like it can be plants, the animals, microorganisms, and even human beings, which are obviously animals. And there are abiotic components as well. That is the light, water, air, soil, etc. And when a single system is consisting of these biotic, abiotic factors both, and when they interact among themselves, then we call as ecosystem. So for any part of an environment, to call it as an ecosystem, the most important criteria is that, first of all, that particular ecosystem should have a demarcated boundary. There should be a limit to that ecosystem. It can be a very small one, it can be a large one. Okay, that's why we are talking about one of them as mangroves. And second thing, as I mentioned, it should be having biotic and abiotic components both, and there should be interaction between both. Then it is called as an ecosystem. And that's the reason when we talk about mangroves, we are able to call it as one ecosystem, because here in the mangrove ecosystem, biotic as well as abiotic factors both are included, and they also interact among themselves. When we say that they interact among themselves, as an example, I can tell that there are plants which you can see on the screen right now. Now, we all are aware about the basic fact that plants are autotrophs, and they carry out the process of photosynthesis, and because of which they are able to prepare the food. So in order to make the food by the process of photosynthesis, they are dependent upon four main factors. So they need water, they have chlorophyll within them, they require sunlight, and they take up carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So as we can see, sunlight, water, carbon dioxide are the abiotic factors, and because of which they are able to produce food. So there is an interaction between the biotic factor, that is these plants, and the abiotic factors which I mentioned. That's why it comes under one ecosystem. In fact, in this mangrove ecosystem, there are lots of animals, birds, and reptiles, and all which are present. They are also dependent upon these plants for their sustenance. So there is again an interaction. No individual, no population is ever unique. or independent in an ecosystem. So after understanding that, let's come to what exactly are mangroves and how they are different from the other ecosystems. So when you talk about mangroves, like as per the Oxford Dictionary, if you see, there's no proper definition as such, but we call the mangroves as either trees or shrubs. When you talk about the mangrove plants, they are most commonly trees. Some of them are even shrubs, or sometimes the words can be like slightly overlapping. Like if you say tall shrub, there can be a small tree also. But we got an idea about the range of the height. So they are trees or the shrubs, and they grow mainly in tidal, chiefly tropical regions, and the places, this type of soil where they grow, we call them as swampy soil. So in order to make the understanding easier, we can say that wherever there are inland rivers and the river goes and meets the sea or the ocean, so that junction, wherever the river goes and meets the sea, in that junction there are swampy regions or marshy regions. That is where generally the mangroves are formed. So we also call them as littoral, yes, swampy forest. And these kind of regions, because they are marshy and swampy, so the soil is not very loose and the soil is not very tough also. So it's like the plant roots cannot have complete hold over the soil, and that's why the root system is very extensive in these plants, as you can see over here. Plus there are tidal actions, high tide and low tides. So during the high tide, the roots are submerged in the water, and during the low tides, the roots are away from the water. It is in the marshy soil, so it becomes very difficult for the plant to survive that way, and that's why the adaptations arise. And that's why it is mentioned the above ground portion, they form dense thickets. There are dense entangled branches if you go through these regions. That is how the Oxford Dictionary explains it. So we call the mangroves as salt tolerant trees. And because in this ecosystem, in the conditions where these plants are growing, along with the type of the soil that is present, the second thing which the plants have to face is that there is a very high amount of salt content in it. And that's why these plants, the mangroves, which are growing in such regions, they have adapted that they can tolerate the high salinity conditions. And such adaptations make them different from the other plants, and we call them as halophytes. So the word can be divided into two parts. Phyta means plants, halo means saline. So the plants which are able to sustain themselves in the saline conditions. See, one has to understand it this way, that we are talking about the plants which are growing in these swampy, marshy regions. So nobody has purposely planted them and forced them to grow over. It is a product which has arisen out of the evolutionary process. That means somewhere in the line of evolution, the plants have themselves decided that, okay, this is the area which will invade and we will grow. Because evolution is a very complicated process. Okay, like everywhere there cannot be favorable conditions. So sometimes in order to win the competition and make sure that the species sustain, so sometimes the propagules have to go to some uncomfortable or unfavorable areas and try to invade over there. And in that process, they develop the adaptations. So these mangroves are also able to do that. So they are able to survive and sustain themselves in the harsh coastal conditions, and that's why we call them as salt tolerant trees. You'll see the details about this. And as an adaptation, what they have is within their system, they have a complex salt filtration system. It's like there are two types of plants under this. One type, what they will do is like they will try to avoid taking up the salt within them. So we call them salt evaders. And in the other case, what happens is they don't have a system to avoid the salt, but they will be taking up the salt within them. But they have a mechanism by which they are able to excrete out the extra salt from their system. So we are able to call them as salt excretors. So salt evaders and salt excretors. In both the ways, what they are doing is they are tolerating the high salt content. So salt water immersion, the constant wave action, the marshy soil, these are creating the stressful condition for the plants, but still they are able to survive very well over there. And in this kind of a soil, instead of calling it as soil, the better word would be mud, like waterlogged mud. Constantly for major part of the day, the soil is completely waterlogged. And because the pores of the soil are filled with water, So the amount of oxygen in the mud becomes less. We call it anoxic conditions. And that is also a kind of stressful condition for the plant. So it's like increase the salt content, the wave action, the anoxic conditions. All these are the challenges which the plants have been facing, and they have over the period of years during evolution adapted themselves to sustain in these conditions. So this is very important to know. Now, if you look at these plants, the word mangrove, okay, how it has been derived. So it has been derived from a Portuguese word called mango, and the meaning of that word is assemblage of plants, a very general meaning. Because if you take a look at these photographs, or if you have visited a mangrove sites, you'll be aware that there are lots of plants which are growing in clusters. Like there are hardly any plants which grow very what you can say sparsely or scattered distribution over there. They generally grow in big clusters because together they are able to bear the wave action in a better way. So that gave rise to the meaning called mango. But later on, by way of speaking or like something, it got corrupted, and something that mango became mangrove, and then they turned into mangrove, and we have settled with this. So we just have to follow the word mangrove, and we should know the origin. That is the Portuguese word called mango. So again, mangroves are plants are of two types basically. We have something called true mangroves, and we also have mangrove associates. Now, when you say true mangroves, it's like the area in which this ecosystem is present. It is quite broad because, as I said, where the freshwater bodies go and meet the marine waters in that junction. So it cannot be a small point or a small location. It's a transitional phase. So there are some parts in that region where more of the salt water is there, or more towards the seaward side. In those regions where these plants grow, those plants are called true mangroves. And there are other group which are called mangrove associates. So it's like these mangrove associates are a part of that ecosystem, but they're not exactly in those conditions which the true mangroves are facing. But still being a part of that ecosystem, somewhat facing those conditions, that's why we call them as mangrove associates. Now, when you talk about true mangroves, considering the conditions in which these plants are growing, as I mentioned, the another problem is that the soil is having less amount of oxygen content, anoxic condition. So the root system, which are normally positively geotrophic, if they keep on growing within the soil, then the plants can suffocate. And that's why they have an adaptation, as you can see in this first picture over here, that the roots sometimes after growing within the soil, they come up, which is an unusual feature. So the root system becomes positively geotrophic to a large extent, and these long roots that you are able to see, they are called as pneumatophores. Pneumatophores are also known as the breathing roots. These pneumatophore, a single one if you see, at the tip, they are long pointed structures, as you can see. At the tip of each pneumatophore, there are small pores which are present on it, which are known as lenticels. These lenticels are the ones which help the plant to breathe. So that itself indicates that the soil in which the plants are growing are highly suffocating or anoxic soil. And that's why these adaptations have taken place. So that is pneumatophores. So waterlogged areas, these plants are able to survive because of that. You'll find lots of it if you go to such ecosystems. And these are a part of the true mangroves, the ones where the mangroves are actually facing the seaward saline swampy conditions. Along with that, as I mentioned, that there are many plants which are able to have a mechanism by which they are able to take up the salt content from the soil, but they cannot keep too much salt within it, because having a lot of salt content within the system will tend to dehydrate the plant. So in order to avoid that, what the plants do is, as you can see over here in this leaf, there are a lot of salt crystals which are deposited. That is another very interesting adaptation. So you can see over here on the leaf surface, lots of salt crystals are directly present. So they are not being, what you can say, sprinkled from the top. These salt crystals have oozed out from the leaf surface and settled. as and when the time will pass, or because of the rain, water and all, they will be washed off. So the leaves, if you take a section and observe under the microscope, on the epidermal surface, there will be specialized glands present. And these glands are able to help the plant to remove that excess salt from it. That is another unique feature which you will find. So both these points are able to, the morphological features are directly able to tell you what kind of stressful conditions the plants are facing. This is something you will not find in any other normal mesophytic plant. Right? And coming to the mangrove associates, so they are slightly away from the actual stressful conditions, but they grow among the mangroves and they are a part of that ecosystem. So their adaptations are not very intense as compared to the actual true mangroves. So these two words also have to be understood. Okay. Now there is another way of classifying mangroves depending upon their actual closeness to the sea or the land. So if the plants are growing very close to the sea conditions and they are facing the maximum stressful conditions, we call them front mangroves. Similarly, the ones which are slightly towards the back, but not completely away from the stressful conditions, so they are known as the intermediate mangroves. And the ones which are facing the least stressful conditions, but still are a part of that ecosystem, like kind of mangrove associates, what we say, they are back species. So we can also categorize the mangrove plants into front, intermediate, and back, depending upon their closeness to the sea or the land. There's another very beautiful adaptation which you find among the mangroves, especially in the front mangroves. The thing is, now we have understood the geographical and topographical conditions in these mangroves. So what happens is the plants, just like any other organism, have to reproduce. And in any normal plant, a flowering plant or angiosperm or phanerogams, which you must have heard, it's like the plant reproduces and there are seeds produced. So plants will have fruits. Inside the fruits, there will be seeds. And there are different methods by which the seed dispersal takes place. So like plants are dependent upon the air, plants are dependent upon water, and other animals and birds are also helping the plants in dispersing the seeds in general among the plants. But in the case of mangroves, okay, in other plants, what happens is when the seeds are dispersed by any method, they go and fall into the soil. And then when the conditions are favorable, the seeds, if they are falling at the right place, they will germinate and new plants arise out of it. But what about mangroves, especially in the front mangroves? If suppose the seeds are detached from the plant and they go and fall into the swampy soil or muddy soil, which is most of the time immersed in salt water, it is quite logical to know that in such harsh conditions, the seeds cannot germinate because the water is very salty, the soil is very salty, and the mud is very like dull, what we say, quicksand. Okay, it can, the seeds, the embryo from within the seeds is not able to push out and grow out of it. So this is a very beautiful adaptation which these plants have developed. As you can see in the first picture, it is called as vivipary. Now this is a term which we normally use in the case of animals, where the highly developed animals, that is the mammals, they directly give birth to young ones. They don't lay eggs. If they are laying eggs, we call it oviparous. So eggs and seeds can be very well correlated between animals and plants. Okay, in the case of animals, eggs are laid, the young ones will hatch out of it. In plants, the seeds are produced, the embryo will germinate out of it. They are very similar phenomena. So animals which are viviparous, they directly give birth to their young ones. In the case of plants, vivipary means the fruits with the seeds are attached to the mother plant, and in the mother plant itself, they start germinating. They are not detached. They are not dispersed. They are present, attached to the mother plant, and they have started germinating there itself. So you find a small seedling germinated directly on the mother plant. And you can see another interesting thing. See the shape of the seed. It is not a small rounded one. Normally, when you imagine a seed, you have a kind of a generalized shape in your mind. Elliptical, rounded, right? but this is not a round one. You can see it is elongated and it is pointed towards the tip. There is a reason for this as well. What happens is when it is elongated like this and downward pointed, when it starts germinating, that means the cotyledons have emerged, the new young leaves have started. That means the new generation is ready. And after that, once it has germinated to some extent, then it will detach and fall down like this. So it will fall straight. And because of the shape and the pointed tip, it will ensure that the tip of the seed directly penetrates the swampy mud, but it will not drown the seed. The germinated portion, the seedling part, will remain above the soil and the water. And then it will continue growing further. That is vivipary. So they have adapted themselves very nicely for this. So that is a very important part of mangrove. So we have seen a lot of unique features how mangrove plants have developed over the years and they have been sustaining themselves. That's why they, wherever these mangrove plants have developed in the naturally in the coastal regions, they have formed thick forests over there until and unless there is any kind of human disturbance. So that ecosystem is having a very important ecological significance because they are able to protect the coastline from a lot of natural or harmful effects. It's like a land-sea barrier. If there are huge strong waves, or very rarely wherever tsunami takes place, that's a natural disaster. So these mangroves are able to reduce the impact of the wave action to a very large extent, and they're able to protect the inner ecosystems. So they act as a wave breaker as well as a wind breaker. So the impact of the floods has reduced like anything. In 2004, in December, there was a huge tsunami which occurred in the southern part of India and as well as the nearby regions. So wherever the mangrove forests were intense, the impact of the tsunami was very less. And that itself shows the ecological significance. So coastal regions, for the coastal regions, these mangroves are a very, very important asset. Okay. Not only that, as I said, that it is an ecosystem. So it is able to provide food, shelter, breeding ground for a lot of marine animals. We'll be seeing some of the interesting fauna. So we have striped barnacles, the mudskipper, the crabs, etc., which are able to sustain themselves in this ecosystem. This is the home for them. They also act as air purifiers because they grow in large numbers and they absorb a lot of carbon dioxide. As Shubham mentioned in the beginning, this is the one of the ecosystem whose carbon sequestration capacity is very high compared to other plants. So wherever these plants grow, they are able to take up more amount of carbon dioxide within them and they are able to keep the air pure. It is also a water purifier. And that's why, because it is having a very good carbon sequestration capacity, we call it as a carbon sink. So as and when these problems which everybody is aware, that is the global warming, greenhouse effect that's increasing, so more amount of mangrove ecosystem will contribute a lot to reduction of this one of the most dangerous greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And mangroves are also able to provide over the years the tribal communities who have been living over there, they're dependent on the mangrove ecosystem for a lot of purposes. They are dependent for food, for fuel, for fishing communities, because this is the site which is their fishing grounds. And wherever these ecosystems are safe enough for tourism activities, so they are able to provide a lot of ecotourism opportunities as well. All these points will come across as and when we'll see the mangrove plants also. So we have understood how significant this ecosystem is. Like, let's take a look at why we are talking about this ecosystem especially, and why every Indian should be aware about the importance of this ecosystem especially. If everybody is aware about the political map of our country and the geographical distribution of coastal regions in our country is so intense, we are all aware about the fact that this is one such beautiful country where we have almost all the ecosystems within it, not only mangroves, right? We have the icy mountains in the north, We have dense forests in the east. We have desert ecosystem in the west and the northwest. We have the central peninsular region, fertile land. We have a very huge coastline, like which extends in the Gujarat region, the Gulf of Kutch, all the way coming down to Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, Kerala. Then we come to Tamil Nadu, the Andhra Pradesh, Orissa, Bengal region. And no doubt, we cannot ignore our islands, that is the Lakshadweep and the Andaman Nicobar. So this entire huge coastline, all the way from Gujarat to the Bengal region, extends to about 7,500 kilometers approximately. And that's a very huge length. So the entire southern peninsular region of our country is surrounded by this coastline. We have Bay of Bengal, the Arabian Sea, and the Indian Ocean. All three huge water bodies below the lower part of our country. So this region has got extensive mangrove covers. And this mangrove ecosystem in the coastal region, as from this map itself, now you can understand how many states and union territories will be having mangrove ecosystems within it. So there are mangrove ecosystems in Gujarat, Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Orissa, and the Bengal, Lakshadweep and Andaman Nicobar. So as per the latest report now, Indian government, we have Ministry of Environment and Forests. So there is a constant data updation which keeps on taking place. So approximately, like there are lots of people who are involved in this work. And for example, we have FSI, Forest Survey of India, which is located at Dehradun. So they have this all the machinery and the instrumentation techniques which are required in order to calculate the amount of forest cover in the country and also segregate them into different types of forests. So a lot of data updation keeps taking place using satellite imagery, remote sensing technologies, and it is estimated that approximately the total mangrove cover in our country is around 4,992 square kilometers, which is not a small number, right? And there are top 5 states in India which has at present having the maximum mangrove cover in India. So we have mangrove cover maximum in the West Bengal, and I believe everybody will be aware that West Bengal is one such state which is having the largest mangrove delta in the world, and that we know that it is the Sundarbans. That is followed by Gujarat, that is 1175. The numbers cannot be, it's not necessary to remember all of them, but we can get an idea about it. Andaman Nicobar group of islands, which are very beautiful islands and much away from the mainland, and that itself is keeping them safe. So it is having a good amount of mangrove forest around it, because this Andaman Nicobar itself, though in the map they are hardly visible, but there are more than 250 islands over there. Many of them are uninhabited. That's why the ecosystem is much maintained over there. And Andhra Pradesh has got 405, the Godavari Delta in the east. So we have Krishna, Godavari, Kuringa forest, which are very popular for the mangroves. And Maharashtra has got 324 square kilometer. Entire Konkan region, the Mumbai region has got a very good amount of mangrove forests in it. So these states in India at present has got the maximum mangrove forest cover, and there are still forests available in the other states also. Overall in our country, mangrove distribution is very, very vast. So that's why from the Indian scenario, if you see, it's like the forest cover cannot be ignored. Orissa has also got a good amount of mangrove forest cover. The coastal region, we have the Bhitarkanika forest, which is very popular near the Mahanadi Delta. So let's take a look at some pictures. These are the mangrove forests of Goa. Like, of course, from the pictures, every ecosystem will look similar among the mangroves. So these are the Goa mangroves. These are the Bhitarkanika mangroves of Orissa, which are very popular. And this is in the Andaman Nicobar region, Baratang Island, very popular over there. And how can anyone forget this? That is about the Sundarbans in West Bengal. So Sundarbans is actually a part of India as well as the neighboring state of Bangladesh. 1/3 part of Sundarbans is within India, and the 2/3 of the remaining Sundarbans is within Bangladesh. So this Sundarbans is also very important forest for the country, and it is a very important heritage site also. So these are some examples. As you can understand, you can see how the dense forests are there, and there are tourism activities also. Like you can go as an eco-tourist, you can take the boats, you can take a road tour of the forest regions and admire the mangroves. Right? That's a difference between a tourist and an eco-tourist. Like as a tourist, it's like you will admire the beauty and you will enjoy the natural view. But as an eco-tourist, you will also be responsible enough that you will not litter the place and you will not make the place dirty and you will not harm that ecosystem. That is very important. So wherever you go as a tourist, you should be aware that you must be an eco-tourist, not only a tourist. Okay. So after understanding the basic understanding about the ecosystem and how they are significant, what kind of adaptations, the geographical and the climatic conditions, the topographical conditions. Now let's understand what type of plants and animals you will find among the mangroves. So talking about the biodiversity, we'll discuss about the flora first, and there are about 10 plants which I have shortlisted, which we should know about the mangroves, and there are similarly some points about animals also we will see the faunal diversity. So starting with the plants, like this is the first one called Avicennia marina, right? And it belongs to family Avicenniaceae. This is a plant also known as the gray mangrove. Like you can see, it is the one which is having a grayish colored bark. So there are many such plants which are present together. They give a grayish appearance, and that's the reason we are calling it as a gray mangrove. So this gray mangrove also is a small tree, reaches to around 3 to 10 meters tall. Sometimes it can grow up to 14 meters also in the tropical regions. And this is the most common species that you find in and around the Bombay region. It has got a smooth, light gray colored bark, and like it, if you are trying to remove the bark, it comes out in stiff, brittle conditions. They are removable. Okay. And talking about the leaves, like as far as the Avicennia is concerned, you are able to identify the Avicennia among the ecosystem because of the difference in the color in the upper embryon and the lower epidermis. If suppose the plants are not in the flowering stage, so they have bright glossy green on the upper surface and silvery white or gray on the lower surface. Like if you are touching the leaf, you can actually find a hairy structure, thick leathery texture. So from the picture also you can make out. This becomes a very unique identifying feature, right? So they are normal alternate leaves, and the color difference you have understood. So Avicennia marina can be easily identified, and Avicennia, the leaves, especially if you take a section and observe under the microscope, on the lower side there are inverted peltate T-shaped hair present. That's a very unique thing which you find over here. So the difference in the color between the upper and the lower epidermis, that can be understood because the upper surface is more exposed to the sun, lower surface is away from the sun. So there is more distribution of chlorophyll content on the upper surface, and they are dark green in color. So that's an adaptation. This is more common among the dicots, but here it is much more prominent. So this Avicennia marina, the flowering, it takes place from about May to July. So this is the time, if you visit the ecosystem, you might find them in a flowering stage. Okay. And it is very common at the mouth of the rivers or in the lower tidal regions, the junction where these plants are present, where the river water actually deposits this water into the sea. They are shade intolerant. So it's like they need open areas. So if suppose any mangrove restoration programs are going on anywhere and they're planting Avicennia, so it is pertinent to note that we should be planting them in the open regions rather than in the shade regions, so that they can survive better. And this is the picture which we had shown earlier also. In these Avicennia leaves, you will find a lot of salt content deposit. So if you again over here, you can say that if you take a section of the leaf and observe under the microscope, you will see the salt glands present. They are the ones which are able to excrete out the excess salt from within it. So that's an adaptation which the plants have developed as an halophyte. Roots of the plants are pencil-like in structure, and they have economically important uses like it is used for fodder or fuel wood, like the local tribals use it. Timber, because mangrove stems and mangrove wood is generally of a very highly durable quality as compared to other plants. It has got medicinal properties as well, right? And there is an insect called as the mangrove moth, for which this plant is supposed to be a host plant. It is a very interesting one. And the fruits are also edible. The local people consume them. And in Mumbai and surrounding regions, those who are from Mumbai will be aware that we have a region called Navi Mumbai, that it extends from Vashi onwards towards Panvel. So that region, then we have the uh, Bhayandar region, Thane Creek, okay, Vikhroli side, Versova side. In all those places, if you see, Abyssinia is the most common one. It is the most abundant mangrove species that we find over here. So that was all about Abyssinia marina. Similarly, let's go to the next one. And we have Soneraceae alba. Soneraceae alba belonging to family Lythraceae. Again, a very unique plant and one can easily identify on the field. So it is also commonly known as the sweet-scented apple mangrove, or also known as the white chippy. As far as the common or the vernacular names are concerned, we can understand there can be an n number of names, but some of the names which are very popularly known, we should be knowing them. Otherwise, on a local or a regional basis, the names can vary. But it is Soneraceae alba. Okay, sweet-scented apple mangrove. And among the mangrove trees, these are the most widespread ones. And they grow up to around 15-meter tall, cream colored grayish to brownish bark, and vertically they can have some cracks or fissures. Pneumatophores, as you can see, are cone shaped. In the earlier ones, it was not a cone shape, they were pencil like ones. So shape of the pneumatophores can also be an identifying feature. Leaves are different over here. One can identify this plant more commonly from their leaves. So you can see it has got a rounded appearance, leathery texture, and similar upper and the undersides. They are present. So flowers are white in color and they open and they remain open only for one night. March to July is the time. So this time, if you go to the mangrove sites, you might see them in flowering. Pollination takes place by bees and the flowers look very beautiful. Fruits are large, as you can see over here. That's why it is given the name apple mangrove. It has got a resemblance to an apple, right? And a star-shaped base having many tiny seeds. And these seeds, they do not show vivipary. They are white, flattened, and buoyant. One adaptation which you can highlight over here is that the seeds are buoyant. Buoyant means they have a lot of air spaces, because of which when there are a large number of seeds which are produced, they are dispersed, they fall into the water, but they do not drown. They remain afloat. So when they remain afloat, wherever there is a low tide and it settles down in the mud, they can germinate. So that's another way of adapting besides vivipary. So this one, Soneraceae, it is believed that they are useful for whenever the extra salt is there, they are transferred to the old leaves and they are shed later on. So twice in a day, whenever there is salt water inundation, the plants are able to survive it, and anaerobic conditions, they can also survive it. So they are quite hardy plants, and that's why they are widely used in restoration programs. Now, talking about restoration programs, it is very important to know that wherever these activities are carried out, of course, they are very good, but at the same time, the choice of the species must be taken into consideration. Okay, like restoration doesn't mean that you take the saplings and you plant it and try to increase the cover. It is very important to note every species requires which type of conditions and select that species only for restoration and increasing the forest cover. And timber, fodder, food purposes, they are useful. And the most important point is that among the mangrove, because nowadays the awareness regarding importance of these kind of plants are increasing. So for the first time, the state of Maharashtra has declared a particular species as the state mangrove tree. We have lots of state trees and state flowers for different species, but Maharashtra was the first state to declare this one, Soneraceae alba, as the official state mangrove tree in August 2020. So this was reported in August 2020 that Solanaceae alba, or the sweet-scented mangrove apple, is the official state mangrove tree of Maharashtra. That's a recent update. So that's a very another good step towards increasing the awareness. Okay, the next one. Now this one is Solanaceae apetala. It's the same genus but another species. Now this again belongs to the same family, and the common name should not be confusing. The earlier one was sweet-scented apple mangrove. This one is called mangrove apple. They are very similar ones, but this is mangrove apple. So it's an evergreen tree which grows very fast. It has got a columnar crown. It can grow up to 15 to 20 meters tall. And pneumatophores are tall ones. In the earlier one you saw, they were cone shaped. These are also somewhat cone shaped, but they can be around 1.5 meter tall. Approximately 1.5 meter means the height of a normal human being. These pneumatophores can grow so tall. Then it's a very important part of the mangrove swamp and one of the very important species for restoration during reforestation, because when it grows fast and it is able to survive well, it becomes a hardy species. So it's like many times when these plants are present and the region experiences very heavy winds, especially like cyclonic conditions, and there are strong winds which happen. So these plants themselves will break and topple, but they have the ability to regrow very fast. And that happens over here by coppice shoots. Coppice means from the main branches, when small propagules start growing, they grow further. So it's like the plant appears dead, but from that dead part, the new branches will arise. That is coppicing. So they are able to recover them. So they are not actually dead. Some living tissues are enough for the plant to again regrow. So this plant is able to do that. So here, the flowers are white in color, again open at night, and by morning they fall off. The flower becomes a very good source of nectar for the bees also. And the fruits are useful traditionally. It has got medicinal properties, and they have the fruits as well as the seeds. Both are consumed for their medicinal uses. The wood is reddish brown in color and very useful in the matchstick industry, which is being used over there. And for the coastal swamp community, it is a very important tree because it protects the soil from erosion and also provides an important habitat for the wildlife. So that is mangrove apple. Going on to the next one, we have Aegiceras corniculatum, belonging to family Myrcinaceae. Now this is also known as the river mangrove. So this plant are now intermediate mangroves. They are not actual true mangroves. So we'll be talking about all types of plants from intermediate front and back mangroves as well as mangrove associates, and try to incorporate all types. So they are common along the sheltered intertidal banks in the creeks and channels, and they can grow together to form very dense thickets. So because of their dense clustered appearance, they are able to withstand the strong waves and the winds. And there are prominent stilt roots which are present in these mangroves. Stilt roots are also supporting roots. We'll be seeing them in another species now, which are able to make sure that the plants are able to grow and survive well. The leaves are oval shaped, as you can see, which grows long, and there are glands on the leaves for excreting salt. You can see them. So though they are intermediate mangroves, but this adaptation is found within it. And the flowers are small, they grow in bunches, as you can see, but though they look beautiful, their smell is like rotten bananas. Okay, pollination by bees, and the flowering time is from April to September. So it's like in the end of the summer or towards the peak of the summer till major part of the monsoon is the most common flowering time for majority of the mangrove species. So this becomes the best time to visit mangrove ecosystem, observe them in the flowering stage. These are the fruits, as you can see. So they are long, pencil-like, and they appear very similar to green chilies. So mangrove mirchi, that is also I have heard as one of the common names. They are slightly curved and have a pointed tip. They look very beautiful. Spiral pattern cap is present at the end of the fruit. And as and when the fruits ripen, the color also changes. and they're found on the river banks, having different range of salinities. And this mangrove is not found only in India. It is from India to New Guinea as well as all the way to Australia also. So there are mangroves in different other countries as well. All the countries which are in the southern hemisphere having coastal regions, there are these mangrove ecosystems which are found. So this is having a lot of economical uses. They are used as a vegetable, medicine, fish poison, dye, as well as a good source of honey. Wherever this flowering is found, honeybees become a part of that ecosystem also. And the local people, they depend upon that honey for their consumption. Next one, this is Brugueria cylindrica, family Rhizophoraceae. Now, this is also commonly known as the white Burma mangrove. And it's a tall tree which grows around up to 20-meter tall, has got a gray smooth bark, and again intermediate mangrove. And the actual location one can understand when you can actually visit the site and see the distribution. So in the mid intertidal region, it's the best way to know. And it is a shade tolerant and a very good regeneration potential. Regeneration, as I said in the earlier one, papaya shoots was one of the examples. And this one has got a unique structure called knee roots, which are present like this. It's like wherever the base of the trunk is there, the roots have a proper, like our knees, as you can see. Somebody is standing on the knees, so it is able to get that support. So because of the appearance, it is known as the knee root. So there is a difference between the knee roots and the stilt roots. And flowering is from May to August. The flowers are small. There are clusters of 2 to 5, and the petals also turn brown rapidly. Yeah. So their pollination is dependent upon day-flying insects and butterflies. And you can see the flowers only on a closer view, we can actually understand them, because from far the flowers may not be very prominent because of the color, that is the greenish yellow color, which is very merging properly with the leaves. So the petals of the flower, they hold the pollen very loosely. So it's like whenever the insect comes and sits on it, so there is a small tension created and the pollen cloud is just dispersed. So the head of the visiting insects receives that parcel of the pollen, which it goes and distributes it to the other one. So here, by these examples, we can understand how ecosystem functions, how plants are dependent upon these animals, right? So they are used as a fuel wood, timber, as well as medicine. So local tribal people are dependent upon these species for a lot of these purposes. They know about this. They are aware about the ethnobotanical knowledge about the medicinal properties, which we are still yet to find out from the tribal people. Right? Going on to the next and a very interesting species, which is like Rhizophora Mucroneta. Now here, this particular plant is popularly known as the walking mangrove. And that is mainly because of the very prominent stilt roots, which you can see over here. These are the stilt roots. They're also called as the red mangrove, that's another name. But why it is known as the walking mangrove? Because the stilt roots are so prominent, it will appear as if the plant is walking and coming on the soil. That's why it is known as the red or the walking mangrove. They grow up to 20 to 25 meters tall, and intermediate mangroves all the way towards upstream also, but they are more towards the seaside, as you can see in the picture. And very well developed aerial stilt roots. And the name of the species is Rhizophora Mucroneta. So mucronate leaf apex is one of the types. As you can see over here, the tip of the leaf has got thin pointed structure, which is not very pointed, but an abrupt point. That is called as a mucronate apex in terms of leaf morphology. And that's why it is called as Rhizophora Mucroneta. Very prominently and very easy to identify in the field also. Yeah, elliptical in shape. So this Rhizophora, the flowers look very beautiful. And this one is only from July to October. And they have yellow, white colored flowers, as you can see, thick and hard sepals. Seeds are viviparous. You can see the viviparous condition very prominent over here. And old leaves and roots, they are used during childbirth also. It has got some kind of a laxative effect, it is said. And the bark is also used to treat a condition called hematuria, that is blood in the urine, and a lot of other uses like timber, fuel wood, fodder, also for charcoal production. Because these plants have a good carbon holding capacity or carbon sink condition, that's why charcoal production also one of the uses. That is Rhizophora Mucroneta. Now, this next one is not a true mangrove, but one of the mangrove associates that is called Acanthus illicifolius, family Acanthaceae, and this is also called as the sea holly, also known as the mangrove holly. It looks very unique and very easy to identify in the field also, and it is a small shrub, an aquatic plant mainly found in the river banks or the tidal canal sites, and you can identify the plant mainly from its leaves, because as you can see the leaves have got a pair of spines at the margins here, so it gives a very unique appearance as if the leaves have been torn off. So the stem is shiny green, it's a semi-woody sprawling shrub, and because of the spiny appearance of the leaves and as well as the flowers, one can easily identify it on the field. So the flowers are pale lilac in color, and the shoot is long. There are about 20 pairs of flowers which are produced, around 2 to 4 centimeter long. And the seeds and the fruits, as you can see, there are wrinkled whitish green seeds present. And when the fruits are ready to disperse the seeds, they just explode when ripe and the seeds are dispersed. So they are not true mangroves, they are like mangrove associates, and they are able to distribute the seeds easily and survive again. In Bombay region especially, I've seen this near Gorai beach. So that is the place where this Acanthus illicifolius was very abundantly found. You'll find them in other regions as well. Okay. When we are talking about the mangrove plants, how can anyone forget this one? And that is Heritiera littoralis, also known as the looking glass mangrove. Now, looking glass mangrove is very popularly found in the seashores along Southeast Asia and tropical Africa. So here, why it is known as the looking glass mangrove, we'll come back to the leaves, but this one is also known as Sundari. And it is because of the name Sundari that the forests of Sundarbans have got their name. And that is Heritiera littoralis. So when we are talking about mangrove ecosystem, this is something we cannot ignore, because the world's largest mangrove delta are the Sundarbans. It is a biosphere reserve, it is a national park, it is a wildlife sanctuary. So it is something, a very uniquely protected region in the nature, which we must protect. And the entire region gets its credit because of this tree, that is Sundari trees, Heritiera littoralis. So here it grows around 5 to 15 meter tall, and this kind of root system that you can find over here in this tree, it is called as the plank roots or the buttress roots. They are very popular. And talking about the leaves, they have silvery scales on the underside. That's why they look green from the top and white from below, similar to what we saw in Avicennia. So that is why it is called as, one more reason why it is called as the looking glass mangrove. You can see the leaves over here. When these leaves are held towards the sunlight directly, so they appear more transparent. And that's why it looks like a looking glass. That's the reason it is given the name. And overall, the tree has got a very ornamental appearance. That's why it is also called as the Sundari tree. So in the wild, this tree is very highly exploited, and it has got a strong and durable timber. And because of the unusual leaves, especially, which are glossy, so they are planted and they are able to reflect the light also. This is something new you find among this mangrove. Unfortunately, this species is being threatened. It has become one of the endangered species which needs protection, because if you are planting this tree somewhere, it needs the same conditions. So Heritiera littoralis is one of the threatened species, and since 1980 it has been said that there is an estimated 20% decline in the mangrove area, especially in the regions having this tree. So there are boat shaped fruits and all which you can see. So some efforts are being diverted towards protecting this beautiful tree also. That is Sundari Heritiera litoralis. Then you have Exocaria Agalocha, which belongs to family Euphorbiaceae, and this is also called as the milk mangrove, also called as the blinding tree. Now, why it is called so, we'll see that it's around 15-meter tall, which grows, and a back mangrove, not a completely true mangrove as such. And it can grow in such regions which are disturbed by human activities, so it does not require completely favorable conditions for growth. It can sustain. So that's why to some extent it can be used in the restoration regions in order to cover up the barren regions. It is good for furniture, ornaments, and also as a fish poison. And it has got extensive cable roots, that means highly intertwined roots, we can say. And the main point about this plant is that the roots produce a milky sap. Roots and the lower branches, they produce a milky sap. If enters the eyes, it can lead to temporary blindness. That's why it is also called as the blinding tree or the milk mangrove. And there are tiny yellow flowers, as you can see, very beautiful ones which are produced, and the flowering is from March to July, and pollination takes place by bees. And the last one among the mangrove plant species that we are discussing now, it is Salvadora Persica. This is again not a true mangrove, but when we are talking about the mangrove plants, this also cannot be avoided. It is also known as the toothbrush tree, also called the meswak. Everybody must be aware about the meswak, one of the brands of toothpaste that are very popularly found in the market. So the main component of that is this one, that is Salvadora Persica, also called the toothbrush tree. The small tree or a shrub having a crooked trunk, and the bark is cracked and scabrous. Okay, like technical terms one can understand, and commonly seen along the edges of the mangrove forest. So this is one such species where you will find in the mangrove as a mangrove associate, as well as away from that, even in the arid regions to some extent. So flowering takes place from April to January. A major part of the year you will find them in flowering stage. These are the berries that the plant produces, and the color of the berry is able to tell you the ripening stage also. So this Salvadora, it is the twigs are the ones which are used as a natural toothbrush. So like datun, along with that bubble tree and all, which we say, this is also one of the species from which the datun is prepared and as a toothbrush we use, and widely distributed in the arid regions as well as on saline soils. So the fresh leaves are also consumed as salad. It has got traditional medicinal uses for various purposes. Seed oil is used for making soaps, and this plant is one of the host plants for small salmon Arab butterfly. This butterfly and its caterpillar mainly depends upon this plant for its feeding. So that again, this kind of dependency examples like which we are showing makes you understand that when one of the component of the ecosystem is removed, what happens to the other components. That's why ecosystem is important. So the ripe berries also attract the birds, they're sweet to taste, and if consumed in large amounts, they are slightly narcotic also. So they are again used as a food by many birds, right? So we have seen a lot of mangrove floral diversity. The major plants which we have seen, there are many other plants also which are found in the mangroves. One can always go through the available literature and read more on that. Now, talking about biodiversity, we should also be knowing the different types of animal species which are found in the mangrove ecosystems. So the first one over here is something called striped barnacle, balanus species. Now, they don't look like animals as such, but they are shelled animals which are related to prawns and crabs. So these are the shells that they produce, and the fleshy portion of the body is present within this. So they inhabit the rocky shores in the coastal and estuarine environment, and they are found fixed on the hard surfaces. So it is a part of that estuarine ecosystem. This ecosystem that we are talking about is also known as the estuarine portion. And the water which is found over there is called as brackish water, where the fresh water is meeting the marine waters. So this is one of the components. They grow up to around 1.5 centimeters, small ones, and they feed on small other marine animals during the high tide, and during low tide they remain closed. So that is the very important and common part of the animal diversity which you will find in the mangroves, and that is striped barnacle. Similarly, you will also come across something called the blue spotted mud skipper. It's a very interesting animal and very common one. You can see the muddy soil present in that region and how this animal is completely embedded within that mud. So they live in the brackish water of the estuaries and the freshwater tidal zone, which is often found among the mangroves. And they occur in burrows. You can see how the animal is coming out of its burrow. And there are lots of mud flats. Mud flats means like completely muddy conditions, which are a home for many other animals like this. Many birds also come as a part of the mud flats over there. So these are air breathing fish which have evolved and adapted to walk and climb in the mangrove ecosystem. So sometimes you will find them stuck to the base of the tree trunks also, mangrove tree trunks. Or most of the time they are present embedded within the mud. So it is around 13.5 to 22 centimeter long. That is the size of this kind of fishes, blue spotted mud skipper. Then the next one, this is the very interesting one called ring-legged fiddler crab. Now, in the mangrove ecosystem, crabs are found in large numbers. There are different types of crabs present, and they are small crabs, and the males especially can be identified because of this one enlarged claw, which is different from the other claws, which you can see over here. So they are seen during the low tides. They have adapted themselves to survive in the conditions where there are water ingression taking place, submersion into the soil, and then the water goes back during low tide. So they are able to adapt themselves over there. So as far as animals are concerned, the males have to do a lot of antic performances to attract the females. So this is one of the ways in which the males perform their dance. They will wave their claw like this, and they will attract the mate and also establish their territories in that region. That also becomes a very important part for the survival. So it is a small one, around 1.5 to 2 centimeter long. That is a ring-legged fiddler. Then we have the mantis shrimp. You can see how the body of this animal looks, the mantis shrimp. They are most important predators in many shallow tropical marine habitats. So they are found within the water bodies, and flattish body, like not completely flat, not completely cylindrical, intermediate ones. And the legs are very much adapted for feeding as well as hunting. It can even punch and kick, it is said. So it has got a mantis-like arms and eyes. That's why it is being given the name, the mantis shrimp. So the claws are quite powerful, used to attack and kill the prey. So it is able to use it as a spear for stunning and for cutting and for feeding on the animals. So they are more active during the dusk and the dawn time and grows around 10 to 38 centimeters long. Very interesting component. So when you're talking about ecosystem, like let me remind one more thing, that there are different trophic levels in the ecosystem. So the beginning is always the producers, which we have spoken about, that is the plants. The rest of the ones are the consumers. So there are primary consumers and there are secondary consumers. So these are secondary consumers because these are feeding upon other consumers. So every part of the ecosystem is important for the overall functioning and the efficiency of that ecosystem. Then this is something called telescope snail. The name itself and the picture itself tells you how it looks and why it is known as the telescope snail. So they are large snails with a tall conical shell, and very commonly seen among the mangroves on the muddy banks. They are embedded within the mud, and they are herbivores, mainly feeding on algae. So as I said, these are primary consumers because they are directly feeding on the algae present in the soil in the mangrove ecosystem, and they grow up to around 8 to 15 centimeter long. That is telescope snail. Followed by, now reptiles are also found in large numbers in the mangroves, and among the reptiles it is the snakes which are very common, because there are many snakes which can live in the water bodies. There are many snakes which can live in the soil. This is one of them, called as the little file snake. a small one. So they are unique non-venomous snakes which are found, and they have a loose skin on the body with a rough texture, so that whenever the snakes are able to capture the prey, they can hold the prey tightly. So that is a unique feature of this snake. They inhabit the creeks and the estuaries and shallow sea, which you can find here. And they have a lot of animals as prey. They feed on gobby fish, the mud skippers also, other crustaceans, and even snails. So they are the primary consumers, and these are the secondary consumers. So it can grow around up to 60 to 120 centimeter long ones. Followed by, now talking about birds, black winged stilt. Mangrove ecosystem is also dominated by a large number of very beautiful, unique bird species. Many of them are resident birds, many of them are migratory birds. Resident birds means they are a part of that ecosystem throughout the year. Migratory means they come from other parts of the world and migrate during, especially during the winter season. It becomes their breeding and the feeding grounds. And once the young ones are ready, once the season is over, they will go back to their home country. So there are lots of such birds which are found in the mangroves. The list is very huge. Some of the interesting ones we'll see. This is the black-winged stilt. So wherever water bodies of disturbed habitats you can find, this bird can be seen more commonly. And they feed on lots of insects, snails, crabs, amphibians, fish, sometimes even the seeds of plants. So you can see for these birds, a lot of food is available in the mangrove ecosystem. That becomes a prey-predator relationship, which is very important for sustenance of an ecosystem. So unfortunately, the birds are threatened a lot because loss of habitat is the most common disturbance that we are causing to the mangrove ecosystem. It grows to around 25 centimeter tall. That bird. Okay, that is the black-winged stilt. You can see the legs are thin, and once they're standing, it appears as a stilt root, and there's a black wings they have. That's how the name arises. Going on to the next interesting one, when we talk about mangroves, we cannot forget the flamingos. So there are lesser flamingo and greater flamingo both depending upon their height. This is greater flamingo, and they have a very unique way of standing in the water. One leg is bent. They appear very beautiful. It's a winter migrant, and birds can migrate even from one state to another state as well. So from the Gujarat region, generally they migrate to Bombay side, and they have a unique downward bending filtering beak-like structure. So they will put their beak into the water and filter out along with the organisms, whatever they get, and they will feed on it. So they get their pink color from the food that they eat, especially the red algae which they consume. That's why they get their pinkish appearance. And they feed on small crabs, the shrimps, worms, and other minute animals. So when the birds are a part of an ecosystem, you can understand how much amount of food they are able to get from there. And because it's a greater flamingo, their height is around up to 140 centimeter long, tall ones. And the next one is the common sandpiper with a small beak, a small bird. It's a winter migrate from Europe and Asia. So you can imagine a bird coming all the way to India from Europe region, migrating for the mangroves. And here, whatever mangrove ecosystems we are having, if suppose anything happens to the ecosystem, will these migrant birds come over here or not? And this is the bird which is staying in India for a maximum time. So they have a distinctive teetering behavior, we say, where they constantly bob their tail and head up and down. And you can actually identify them very easily, sandpiper. So there again, their food also includes insects, snails, crabs, fish, and worms. Okay, and the height is just a small, up to 20-21 centimeter long. So it's a small one like a sparrow, we can say, but it's a winter migrant. So these examples are able to tell you like how mangrove ecosystems found in our country can become a home for other migrant guests. And that's why it becomes very important to, this becomes a very important reason to understand that we should be conserving our ecosystems very nicely. Let's take a look at just some other faunal diversity also. I just wanted to show the names and the pictures. We have the blue swimmer crab. Then you have dog-faced water snake, followed by the tick defoliator insect. See, we have a wide range of animal diversity, right from invertebrates, the insects, the fishes. Okay, we have the reptiles, we have arthropods in large numbers, and they are all dependent upon the mangrove plants. We have mammals like Indian grey mongoose, which they feed on the snakes actually, because they have this unique phenomenon of keeping them immune from the venom of the snake. And when we talk about mangroves, we cannot forget this animal, which are a part of the Sundarbans, especially, that is the Royal Bengal tiger, a huge, massive tiger, having a very majestic look. And that's why the name itself is Royal Bengal tiger. That distribution is found in Sundarbans, right? And we have the black-headed gull, one of the very interesting birds. We have the gray herons and the black-headed ibis. So one can see the difference in the size of the birds, the shape of the wings, the color of the wings, the pattern of the beak, depending upon what they feed upon. So all these small adaptations and the morphological peculiarities that you see is all a result of evolution. So with this, I feel that the understanding of the ecosystem must have been clear. Okay, how the entire ecosystem is interdependent because of these features, because of these beautiful organisms that we have. So unfortunately, this beautiful ecosystem of the mangroves are in grave danger. And the grave danger is mainly because of one of the most dangerous creatures on the earth, which is at the height of evolution, and that's we human beings, right? So we have these pictures itself will tell you everything, what kind of threats the mangroves are facing, right? The most common thing is deforestation. It's not just one independent reason. Deforestation is leading to loss of habitat because of which the animals come out into the urban areas and there is man-animal conflict, because of which there is an extinction of species, because of which there can be knock-on effects, and pollution can be another, would be another reason, and because of which whenever any natural disaster take place, the entire region is disturbed very badly. So there are seaports being constructed. There are, in the name of developmental activities, many mangroves are being destroyed in every part of the world, especially near urban areas. This destruction is much more. So environmentalist point has to be understood. A proper ideal environmental impact assessment must be carried out, and it must be understood that how these fragile ecosystems are significant for us. So mangrove ecosystems, wherever they are destroyed, as one can understand by now, that suppose in a region, like as per what the documents say, it's like so and so number of trees, mangrove tree species will be cut for so and so project, and they will be replanted in so and so region. So it is very easy to say that on paper, but one should understand that whenever you are removing a certain number of trees from one region, it is not just about putting them separately in another tree, loading them into a truck and taking them to another place and just dumping it over there. It's like you're removing a very crucial ecosystem from that region, not just the trees. So how many organisms are you going to transplant? That's why once a destruction takes place in a region, as a compensation, you might plant them in another place, but developing an entire ecosystem in another region as it is not that easy. It's very difficult actually. And this kind of dumping, which is very common, like especially in the monsoons and all, if you go, the thermocol, plastic, everything is being dumped over there. And because of the dumping of even the cement and construction waste, which is happening very commonly. So what happens is that in that region, the mangrove plants start getting affected because of the mangroves. There is heavy metal pollution, and there is eutrophication in the water bodies and all, because of which what happens is the plants slowly start getting a slow death, and they automatically get destroyed. So there are lots of such examples which every day, if you open the newspapers also, you will find a lot of articles. So and so region, a lot of dumping is done, then a case is going on and the legal battle continues. And on the other side, mangroves are just destroyed. So there are some section of the people, fortunately, who are understanding all this, and there are some organizations who are working towards a conservation in different parts of the country. So at least there are some people who have taken the initiative and who are trying to spread the awareness. So there are mangrove restoration activities which are done in different places. There are different activities like how to conserve the entire ecosystem and not just the plants. So we have Mangrove Foundation, the Mangrove Cell, United Way Mumbai, Vanashakti, and we have a lot of like the government of India has demarcated certain regions as PAN, Protected Area Network. So a lot of such mangrove regions, because of the pressure put forward by such organizations and NGOs, so the government is demarcating such biodiversity-rich regions as sanctuaries. One such example you can see. This is a very interesting center which is located at Airoli in Mumbai. That is the Coastal and Marine Biodiversity Center. A very good place which is having, there's a natural ecosystem of mangroves which are found in that region, and this institute is developed over there where any person as a tourist can visit and you can have a practical understanding about the mangrove ecosystem. So it's like the bird sounds can be heard. There are auditorium where you can actually sit and visualize these. They have these shows which are kept, and they have a mangrove nursery where they are developing the saplings. You can have a mangrove walk in this wooded region to actually have a feel of the mangroves. There are boating activities which are carried out. So at a nominal rate, one can understand the mangrove ecosystem very nicely. This is at Airoli in Mumbai. Similarly, near in Mumbai itself, the very recently place was converted into a sanctuary, especially for the conservation of the flamingos over there. It was named as the Thane Creek Flamingo Sanctuary. So earlier it was not a sanctuary as such, not a part of a protected area. It was just a naturally available forest area with a good biodiversity. So before any other developmental activity could take over and destroy the region, it got converted into a sanctuary. So now there are forest officers who are posted there and who are protecting that. And as a tourist, you have your own set of rules to be followed if you visit this place. That is Thane Creek Flamingo Sanctuary. This is two examples from Mumbai which I am showing you. Similarly, in Andhra Pradesh, also the government had formed a 7-member committee. And in Andhra Pradesh, as we mentioned, there are the Godavari mangroves which are very popular, also known as the Mother Forest at Koringa. So the 7-member committee have put up and they have suggested that these mangrove forests to be converted into a World Heritage Site. So once it becomes a World Heritage Site on paper, it gets that actual protection also. So these forests are located at the estuaries of Godavari and the Krishna rivers in the East Godavari district. So they're dense mangrove, beautiful forests which are present. And if it gets converted into a World Heritage Site, it will automatically become famous and very well protected also. That is the Koringa mangroves. Similarly, in Kerala, Kochi of Kerala, there are a lot of mangrove activities, mangrove forests which are present. And this one, they are heavily fragmented because of deforestation which is going on. But these places are having a very good carbon sequestration potential, especially over here. Because if you consider the carbon sequestration potential of the entire mangrove ecosystem, then it is not only about the plants, even many animals. So crab density, mangrove leaf litter, mangrove biomass, they're all taken into consideration in order to understand the carbon sequestration potential. So it's like it is said that the amount of carbon sequestered in this Cochin mangroves is comparable to the amount which is stored in the mangrove forests that are found globally. So the amount of carbon dioxide is very high in this region. So it is receiving that extra attention because of that. Then coming to another example of Gujarat. So there are direct seed sowing which is taking place. Like you have the mangrove nursery, saplings which are collected from the same region and then grown over there. They have growing over here in the raised bed plantations. There is a different method called fishbone channel plantation in order to grow the mangroves in a systematic way. And wherever the mangroves are degraded, they are restored in the correct way following sound ecological principles. This kind of plantation activities are also going on in Bombay. And the best example we must acknowledge is done by the Godrej mangroves near Viktoroli. Godrej company is it's a private company which has taken up the task of protecting a mangrove ecosystem in that region, and that must be appreciated and acknowledged. So there are lots of such examples to see how the ecosystem is being restored, and we are trying our best. The environmentalists are trying our best that any component of the ecosystem should not be lost forever. That is a very important aim or a target. So in order to spread this awareness, this webinar is one such example, and a lot of people are actually going to different schools and colleges and spreading the awareness in the younger generation. That becomes very important, because once you go into a separate field and become very big professionals in that, so very few people actually have the what you can say, the tendency to come towards this and give their contribution towards this. But when young generation are given the awareness is there right in the beginning. So in order to make that understandable, there are some days which are observed. So you have the World Wetlands Day on 2nd February, followed by the International Day of Forests on 21st March. Similarly, the World Wildlife Day, 3rd March. You have International Day for the Conservation of Mangrove Ecosystems on 26th July, and Biological Diversity, 22nd May. Many other days are also there. These are all related to the environment and ecosystem. So as a conclusion, I would like to say that this was one component of the different types of ecosystems that we have seen through today. And environment consists of many other such ecosystems. So whenever we talk about environment, it becomes very important to first be aware about it. And it's like you can be from any professional background, any academic qualification, you can be any person out there. If you are a human being, you are indebted to the environment, because ultimately if you are receiving food in your plate and if you are able to breathe oxygen from the air, that means you are a part of the environment. That's why at any stage of life, in any possible way, if you are contributing anything to the environment, that itself becomes a big contribution. Hope this highlighting towards mangrove ecosystem, I tried my best to impart this, and hope it was an interesting lecture for all of you. Thank you everyone for the patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for such a wonderful session. And it was really interesting to know about the mangroves, the ecosystem. And we mostly don't study about mangroves. We just know mangroves like salt plants, halophytes. But in detail, you made us understood. It was a wonderful session. Now we'll move on to question and answer session. So can you see the chat box?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
We'll read out the question one by one.
Yes, I will read out.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Just a second.
Sure.
Mangroves found in coastal areas. How the salinity and water quality affecting the growth and sustainability of the species among them, which is more sustainable to the saline conditions?
Okay, so it's like as far as the salinity is concerned, the salinity was always there as a part of the abiotic component. And in that abiotic component with increased saline condition, the plants have decided to survive and adapt during the course of evolution. And that's why they have developed those adaptations. So they are the halophytes, and as I have mentioned in my talk during between the talk, some of the adaptation, there are specialized salt glands which are present, or they are able to evade the salt content within it, or they are able to excrete out the salt from their leaves. So they are the adaptations that the plants have developed, and they are sustaining themselves. Though it is a stressful condition, they have adapted to that region. Now, if you take out the plant and try to grow it in a very favorable condition, they won't survive. That's how that is sustained.
We'll move to next question.
Sure.
Flowers falling off in morning of mangrove. You mean the corollas fall off, right? Or whole flower?
Now that depends on the species. Sometimes it is the corolla, the petals, or the calyx that fall off. Sometimes the entire flower will fall. Most of the time it is a whole flower that falls off.
Okay, sir. Anyone know about the carbon sequestration method from the mangroves?
Okay, now as far as the technique for understanding carbon sequestration, there are lots of research papers which you can go through. But a very crude and a preliminary method, if you can say, is that you just need to collect the data about the circumference of the tree trunk at the DBH and the approximate height of the tree. and then there are some calculations to be done on the paper. So there are many NGOs also which impart this training program. You can actually go to the field and get this training done.
Why India's Sundarbans mangrove forest is world's largest mangrove delta, even though 2/3 part of the Sundarbans is located in Bangladesh?
Okay, both the points are correct actually. It's like we are talking about the whole of Sundarbans, which is the entire world's largest mangrove delta. And this entire, out of the entire Sundarbans which are present, 1/3 is in India, 2/3 is in Bangladesh. So we are giving credit to both the countries. That is the point. So it's the largest mangrove delta area wise.
How mangrove trees convert pollutant, that is heavy metals?
Okay, so it's like converting of pollutants means like they are kind of, there is something called chelation of the metal ions that take place, or sometimes what happens is they compartmentalize the heavy metal into some products like you have the cell inclusions, prismatic crystals or raphides or styloids or something. So their heavy metals are converted into these compounds, and what you can say, they are frozen into some structures so that they don't affect the rest of the metabolism, and that becomes later an excretory product also there from the older leaves.
What are the criteria for the classification of mangrove at front, intermediate, and back? Also, could you please elaborate on the criteria for considering a species as mangrove associate?
Okay, now front, intermediate, and back mangrove simply depends upon the how close the mangrove is located naturally to the sea or towards the land. If it is closer to the sea, it's a front mangrove. If it is closest to the land, it's a back mangrove. If it is in between both, it is intermediate. And to call it as a mangrove associate means it will not have all the characteristics of a true mangrove. All the adaptations will not be shown. Very few will be present, and it is a part of the mangrove ecosystem. So majority of the time, it is the back mangrove which is a mangrove associate.
Hello.
Yeah.
Which species is more sustainable
Hello.
and high growth rate to high, medium, and low salinity levels?
Hello. I have a follow-up question regarding to that.
Okay.
Actually, what is the criteria of being a mangrove species, like a true mangrove species, like except the pneumatophores? Like not all the species are having pneumatophores. Except that, what are the criteria being a true mangrove species?
So the geographical conditions will become the most important criteria. The soil should be, majority of the time, it should be swampy. There should be tidal waters present. It should be highly saline condition. Plants, of course, will have pneumatophores, but there will be different methodology to tolerate the salt content also. So we have the salt glands on the leaves, inverted pettate hair on the leaf surface. Vivipary can be one of the conditions. So there are different criteria which all can be included, and accordingly the species can be classified. It depends from one region to another also, to some extent.
I have another follow-up question regarding to that. About Acrosticum can we consider it as a mangrove species? Because like it is mostly seen in same habitat, exactly same habitat, and also this Exocaria and also Acantha silicifolius. These species, there is a can we
Okay,
classify it as a true mangrove?
If it is, that's what I said. If it is showing all these features, exactly same features as you are telling, then we can call it as a true mangrove. But Acanthus illicifolius is not a true mangrove as such. It is just a mangrove associate, because it is growing near the more near the river waters, and it is a part of that same ecosystem.
Okay, so then when we are considering when we are taking the extent of mangrove, can we consider these areas, like these associate areas, can we take it as a mangrove ecosystem?
Yes. Wherever mangrove associates are found, and the entire ecosystem, yes. Wherever the mangrove ecosystem, the associates are also found, that can also be included under mangrove forest cover then.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
That's all. Thank you very much.
So should we move to the next question?
Yeah, please. Yes.
Which species is more sustainable and high growth rate to high, medium, and low salinity levels?
More sustainable and high growth rate.
To high, medium,
So-
and low salinity levels.
Okay, so again, it's a very broad question as such because it depends from one region to another. There are some example, as I mentioned, Soneraceae apetala. It's a fast growing evergreen species. So depending upon the region, depending upon the topographical condition, the local ecosystem has to be considered, and accordingly the choice of species can be set. It cannot be generalized broadly for every region. Like in the western coast of India, a species will have certain characteristics, and eastern coast it will be different. So we cannot generalize for every place. So the local understanding has to be there. Accordingly, the species can be selected. So it's always advisable that we use the term germplasm, that from the local region itself, the germplasm must be collected and then it should be propagated there itself, because that is best adapted to that particular region. It has understood the tolerance capacity of that region. That's why.
Next question is how to estimate the hydroxylamine concentration byproduct of nitrogen cycle contribution to the total soil nitrogen N2 emission in mangrove ecosystem.
Okay, now these are ecophysiological procedures which you will get available in the literature. So you can actually collect the leaf samples in different regions from different times of the year also, and you can actually estimate using physiological analysis, and you can correlate that with the amount of nitrogen dioxide emission, and lots of other correlations can also be carried out. So literature will give you all the procedure protocol details.
So, as you said, mango Avicennia is from family Avicennaceae,
Yeah.
but right now accepted according to Q and other floras, Avicennia belongs to family Acanthaceae. So, is there an issue?
Now this taxonomic revision keeps on taking place depending upon various criteria. So wherever it is applicable, if it gets confirmed in the literature, we have to shift that. We have to
But
follow
sir,
that.
morphologically, I don't see any characters like Acanthaceae members usually.
See, we are aware
Avicennia.
about the Bentham and Hooker system of classification. They focus more on the reproductive characteristics, floral characteristics, right? So that becomes a taxonomical part, right? So taxonomists like you, Shubham, I think are more expert on this.
After some years.
Yes, good.
So, Tamil one is asking, can you mention any phenological importance in mangrove ecosystem?
Okay, see, phenological calendar of any plant means the flowering and the fruiting times of the year. So, especially for example, if I say flowering time, so that becomes significant in the ecosystem because that is the time when the pollinating agents are also dependent upon these plants for their food and all. So, one disturbance in the phenological calendar can have a disturbance in other component of the ecosystem. That itself tells you the significance. Even the fruits are being eaten by other animals, other seeds are consumed by the birds, so phenology becomes significant.
Next question is any anatomical adaptation in the stem of mangrove as compared with normal stem?
Okay, so here one anatomical feature I can say is that the stem of a normal mangrove plant, if you take, it has got more of sclerenchymatous tissue present and more of lignified cell walls. So that is the reason much more amount of carbon gets deposited within the stem. You can correlate this with the carbon sequestering capacity. So because of the more of lignification, there is more of carbon dioxide which is acting as a carbon sink. That is the adaptation you can find in this stem.
From Nirmal, one question. I have heard from peers like even due to constant degradation of mangroves from Mumbai coast due to construction activities, they are showing up in Raigad and eating eye of the fertile land. Is something like this happening?
There's one word based on this which coming to my mind right now, that is invasion. So sometimes what happens is from one region, if any nearby ecosystem has got similar conditions, so the propagules from one region can migrate to another region and cause invasion over there. So here in Mumbai coast, as an example, if suppose a lot of construction activities are going on and the plants have already dispersed their propagules and they have found themselves showing up in Raigad district. So there they have got the favorable condition, the fertile land. So it's like you can say because of the activities that are taking place over here, the effect is being shown up in a nearby ecosystem. That can also be a consequence. So suppose here the construction activities reduce and the disturbance decreases. So maybe the good effect will be showing up in the Raigad district also. That's a part of ecological succession, we can say.
Okay, so please explain the features for the identification of Buchroneta species, especially Saxangula and Gymorrhiza. Is there any hybridization in between them?
Now it's like different species, they have very prominent differences, but taxonomists will be able to tell you better on the field depending upon their seed shape, the flower structure, and other peculiarities of the floral characters. So hybridization programs can be done, but natural hybridization as of now, based on what I have heard, it is not reported. Artificially, one can always try for hybridization. But as far as possible, it's better not to disturb the natural germplasm.
Okay, sir. So one more, I don't, there's one question or answer, I don't know. That the Jagjot Singh has written, I try to keep plastic bags, polythene and plastic bottles at bay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make some eco bricks too. School holiday homework grade 6.
That's quite appreciable. And the one of the in the pictures which I showed you, like the most dangerous component which can cause threat to the ecosystem is plastic. If you look around you, plastic in various forms have been clogging our ecosystems, and that is creating a lot of problems. It is not just the physical presence of the plastic, it is also the chemical nature of the plastic. And every day, if you open the newspapers and see, lots of relevant articles are coming up that there are microplastics which are finding their way in the ecosystem, which are not visible, but they are present within us, even within human beings. The food that you eat, the water that you drink is having a lot of microplastics. So it is a good thing that firstly, the government should be trying to come up with ways, alternative ways like this in order to remove this from our society. And secondly, we should have alternative methods also. So as far as possible, we as individuals in our daily life should be avoiding that, and we should go for other means. So I appreciate this, making some eco bricks, and we can actually propagate that. Shubham, you can take up that task.
What is the morphological diagnostic characters of mangroves?
Okay, major feature, if you see, will be found in the leaves and the roots. So leaves generally will have a leathery texture, and thick one, you can see hairy structure in the underside, and the roots will be very strong enough and quite branched, and most of the time stilt or cable roots or knee roots you will find. Morphologically, that is the first thing you should look
To participants, do you have any more questions? Please type in the chat box. I will give you 1 minute or two. Just if you have any more questions, please type in the chat box. So we will wait for 2 minutes.
Yeah,
2 minutes if
Okay.
participants have any questions.
Shubham, I think participants do have the access to unmute themselves.
Okay, Deep. Anybody want to ask any question? You can unmute yourself and ask if you are not comfortable on the chat. It's 8:43. We'll wait a minute and we will move on.
And Shubham, suppose if anybody needs to contact, so you can provide my email ID to them, so I can have a further discussion on that.
Okay, sir, fine. I will provide the email
Yeah, sure.
if anybody wants. Okay. So it's already 8:44. Before we conclude the session and go to vote of thanks, I would like to call upon Amrita Ji to announce regarding the upcoming events.
Thank you so much, Vishnu sir, for this wonderful session. It was very, very informative. And thank you for your patience in answering all the questions of the participants.
Thanks a lot.
Also, thank you so much all the participants for joining and making the session very interactive. We would also like to inform you that we have our event on aquatic toxicology on Shubham, the dates.
Date is 29th June.
29th June. And we do have exclusive discount offers for you. If you want to know more, of course, you all are there in the WhatsApp group. Just do let us know. Some discounts, exclusive discounts are there available till tomorrow 10 a.m. The original registrations, I think, Shubham, can you tell me about the prices?
Yes, the registration fee is 299 rupees, but for early birds is 199. But since you are, but the participants today are who are participating in the event for this today's event, Mangrove Ecosystem, we will be giving you the cost is reduced to 179 rupees. From 300, we are giving you at 179 rupees. It's a very
Okay,
interesting
and it's
topic,
valid
aquatic
only
toxicology.
for the participants of this promo event, right?
Yes, yes,
For the
it's for
event
the
of
park.
Mangrove Ecosystem. And it's active till tomorrow 10 a.m.
Yes.
So if you want to participate in it, do let us know in the WhatsApp group. We'll assist you further.
We will share with the poster and the PR message of this event on your WhatsApp group. Don't worry. If you want to if you want to participate, please let us know. You can contact me or Venus, all the admins, anybody you can contact us. We will be giving you all the details, whatever are required for the event. And if you face any difficulty for the payment or anything, you can contact us. Don't worry.
Also, we do have a wildlife filmmaking expedition in Coorg and Amboli in the month of July and August. So first comes Amboli and then Coorg. Nishta, can you share the link? Okay, thank you so much. Nishta, our team member, she shared the link. If you are interested, just go through the link mentioned in the chat box. Thank you so much once again. We'll upload the recorded sessions by tomorrow afternoon, and we'll give access to everyone.
Thank you, Amrita ji. Before concluding session, I would like to call upon our team member, Mr. Venu, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Hello everyone, I'm Venugopal, a member of the Nature's Eye. I hope the session was insightful and informative for the participants. It is my honor and privilege to give vote of thanks to Dr. V. Vishnu Prasad, especially for giving us time for this webinar on mangrove ecosystem. At a time like these, when global climatic concerns are on an unprecedented rise, and one of the major lifelines of our planet is forgotten about. Through the webinar, I believe everyone of us present here got to understand the vital role these mangroves play in the ecosystem and how crucial it is for the scientific community to shift its reasonable focus on it. Besides, it was also fascinating to know a lot more about mangroves, and I once again thank Dr. V. Vishnu Prasad for such an astute and illuminative webinar on mangrove ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Venu. Thank you so much, sir, for making time from your busy session since academics is starting again and degree work is too much, college work, you know it. So thank you so much, sir, for coming for this event, for accepting the request. Before anybody exiting the event, leaving the meeting, Venu, could you share the feedback form in the chat box? Please fill the feedback form, students, and give your genuine feedback. Venu, could you share in the chat box?
Yeah, one
Also, Shubham, if you want, you can put it down in the WhatsApp group because there were many participants and some of them have left.
Okay, fine. I will share on the WhatsApp group. Fine.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vishnu Prasad. And it was
Thank
a
you.
wonderful session.
Thanks a lot to the entire team. Thank you.
Thank
we
you
end
so
the
much,
meeting?
sir. Looking forward to work with you in future as well.
Yes, same
Yes,
here.
yes.
Thank you.
Should we end the meeting, sir?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much, participants. We can end the session.